Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be looking at the third study in Clarke's Technical Studies book. Now they're getting a little more complicated. So we started out with chromatic movement, then scale movement with a descending larger interval, descending interval of a third or more. Then now we're going up and down in arpeggios. So we're changing direction more rapidly and covering larger intervals. Now that sounds pretty simple, but I think Clarke knew exactly what he was doing in terms of making them this way. So the same principles apply in terms of the connection between the notes, especially when we get into larger range and quicker movement between intervals and changing direction in terms of the range. So the first one, again, starts on an F sharp. I would recommend maybe you start on the D, maybe the C. Some of these have easier fingerings than others. That's going to become very obvious once you're practicing them if you're not familiar with them. Another issue which comes up in this, and we'll address this first, is, well, it's difficult to play them perfectly in tune. Now most people are just trying to get the notes, get basic, comfortable, easy sound production, and that's great. That's what you should first work on. However, if you have a good ear, it's going to bother you that some of these notes are out of tune. And there are a couple ways to deal with it. So I want to suggest one that's very straightforward, and another one that might be a little bit controversial, but I want you to try them both anyway. So in the very first exercise, we're starting on an F sharp, and this pattern does not conform to the pattern of the rest of the exercises. If we go to number 47, which is the second one in this group, at the end, it goes. So ya-da-dee-da-dum, but in the first one, it goes. See, I decided to go ahead and play that low F. You can do whatever fingering you want. I just use the 1, 2, and 3, because that would be the first pedal tone, some people call them. And and all the other patterns conform to that, but this one doesn't. Why? Because it's not, the note is not there. It's not a natural note in the horn. So how does this affect our ability to play in tune? Well, the first way you can play in tune is, and the way that you should make an effort to do so under most circumstances, is to use the slides when you need to. The most obvious note is the C sharp or D flat. And when I play that note without any compensation for the pitch, whatever, this is hard for me to do. I'm going to see if I can do it. That's off. That's about a quarter tone sharp, sounds like to me. And so if that bothers you, which I hope it does, if that bothers you, then you can compensate for that. So you go from the F sharp You see, that requires a very precise movement of the slide to put it in exactly the right position on your horn with the way you play for that C sharp. Some of you might find that the low F sharp is out of tune. Now, I think you can already see, and you already know if you've tried this, you can make yourself crazy with this stuff. And obviously, when you start going faster, I'm playing it at the slowest tempo that he recommends. And of course, you can go slower than that. Please do. When you try and go faster, now that slide movement becomes more and more awkward because it's so quick in and out. And there are other ones that have this same problem. If you know these exercises, you already know what I'm talking about. And there are certain ones. The one that starts on the A, for example. Okay, so that one's pretty easy because I can just leave that slide in the same position. The next one. Fine, I can find the right position for the D. Ah, there it is on my horn. And that position is likely to be a little bit different between the C sharp and the D. So I realize we're getting picky here, but some of you are picky, I know it. And I'm pretty picky, and sometimes the best policy is to let go of that. Don't worry about it. Now, I'm not saying playing it out of tune. I'm saying concentrate on one thing at a time. So if you're concentrating on flow, on the evenness of response, so the notes don't sound do la hi da do la hi da da. They're not going all over the place in terms of their sound quality. That's plenty to work on right there. Work on that until it starts to improve and be easier and fun for you to do. And then try and see if you can play in tune as well. Now here's a more controversial way of doing it, and this relates to bending tones, and I'm going to have to do some work on bending tones because I think they're extremely valuable exercises for many reasons. I won't go into that right now. But this is a form of a bending tone. In other words, if I go ahead and play the first exercise, number 46 in the third study, and I play that C sharp without using the trigger, ooh, now that's a different way of doing it. Guess what? If I can figure out how to do that, I can play pretty close to in tune when I'm going very fast. And that's a tremendous advantage. And it's much less awkward in many instances than using the slides all over the place. Some people drive themselves crazy using the slides. What's the point? The point is to play in tune with a decent sound. Now, of course, you could hear that my sound on the C sharp was not fully resonant. But as long as it feels easy to play and I can get close to the pitch, there's no strain involved, no struggle, and it's going by quickly, no one will be able to hear that the tone is not fully resonant. As long as you're blowing straight through and playing very, very simply physically, it's a great way to do it. And some of the players of the era before mine, in the Boston Symphony, that would be Guittala and Voisin, Armando Guittala and Roger Voisin. They both recommended not using alternate fingerings and just playing everything in tune. Well, what did they mean? They meant this. Some people say blow it into tune. So that's a whole subject in itself, but it's very applicable to this particular study and something that you can work on as a separate kind of skill. Take your time with it. So I'm going to do the same thing on the low A. You see I'm playing exactly the same pitch, but I'm putting the slide in and out. So I can either let the slide affect the pitch, or I can hold the pitch regardless of what the slide is doing. And this is similar to some of the bending tone exercises we'll do later on. Okay, now the other issue here, and you know it if you practice these at all, is fingers. And I like to practice fingers independently. I showed you in the first episode, I believe, I would practice, very lightly on top of the valves or off to the side on the lead pipe. So I can get a nice pop, a nice snap to the articulation of the fingers, I call it. And we have stuff like do, do, di, do, 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 di. Our big problem, just because of the way our body is designed, you see when I engage my third finger, that the other fingers move with it. There's a tendon that's connected there. So it's very difficult to lift up the third finger. And unfortunately, we have to lift it a fair amount. Now, if you're playing a rotary valve instrument, easier. You don't have as long a throw to the valve, and that can be quite an advantage. If you're playing a piston valve tuba, on the other hand, B-flat double bass tuba, then it can be a big problem because the valve throw is so big, and they usually clank around a lot also. Very difficult to do that, which is why most advanced players are playing on rotary valve instruments on the tuba, because it's just so much more efficient. Okay, sorry about the long discourse about fingering, but these are things you need to work out, and remember the basic principles. Make it easier and easier. If you need to go slower, that's a way of taking some of the pressure off so that you can make it easier. Until you start to have success, then move forward a little bit and challenge yourself, either by increasing the speed or by adding a dotted rhythm, as I mentioned in a previous episode. You could go... Now, the first time I played it, I stopped, I slowed down, I corrected it. I had a dead spot. And when those fingers start moving very rapidly, even if they're perfectly timed and coordinated, and you're getting the valves all the way down and all the way back up, which is critical for success with this, there can still, the valve change actually interferes with the ease of the airflow through the instrument. So if you're holding back the air a little bit to control it, you're trying not to overblow, you won't get enough flow energy to carry those notes. And that's what I did. So I had to correct it. Until I have one continuous connected tone that's supported by that moving air. That's the deal. Okay, there's a lot more we can do here. Remember the variations. You can add in all those variations. I do many, many different variations with this. And there's a whole technique which I hope I will address later on when we're working with, in more detail with fingering things or with metronome work, where you can do a pattern of multiple tongue, for example. This would be for a more advanced player, that is contrary to the musical pattern. So here we're going da da dee da 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 dee da ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta 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 ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta. See, I've got a treble tongue pattern going which doesn't fit the musical pattern, and that's quite annoying. But it's a little of a mind bender, and once you get good at stuff, you have to figure out ways to become more flexible and more varied in your approach and have more possibilities for solving problems that you encounter when you're playing music. Remember to keep it musical. One final thought along those lines. If you can hear what's happening, you have a change in harmony. So So it's a harmonic progression. You can figure out what it is if you're interested, but you need to hear it. You hear that progression? Think harmonically. That's my advice. Don't think about the individual notes. Hear that what you're doing is a pattern. Boring, yes. Repetitive, yes. But all you're doing is playing one chord, and leading to the next chord. That's the way of thinking musically when you play these exercises. Always keep the harmonic progression in mind in everything that you do, and that'll help to give you something to hold on in terms of where are you going next. It's called a progression for a reason. Okay, that's enough for today. I'll see you in another session, and I hope you're enjoying your practice. Have a great day. Bye-bye.